one.
She better be cool.
She is cool.
Natalie's so cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yep. She is so cool. She is Natalie Stopka. Natalie Stopka.
We started early today.
Oh my God.
Oh, God.
You're terrors.
Hey, at least I got a fan with Kate.
You do. Actually,
Actually,
the two of you together are just like a comedy team together sometimes.
oh no. You know, we're like, we've dedicated our lives to this. I can't believe
I
it.
know. You guys are a great combo, okay?
Thanks. I think Kathy Hattori's just all right.
Hi, I'm calling from Vermont today and I just finished skiing.
Wow.
Awesome.
Are you on a train?
What? You on a train?
Okay.
I
Here
don't
we
know
go.
who that is.
I don't know, but
Hey,
all right, tell me when we want to start.
what? Are you out of your mind? They're all coming in like a freight train right now. It's like full freight train feedback Friday.
News spread fast. It was Natalie.
Yes. The rumor mill was just working overtime. It's Natalie.
Natalie Stopka.
Okay, I'm not saying it that way.
Well, you know.
Okay, we're good, no?
You think? Okay, well, I'm going like this on the side here with the admitting people.
Oh yeah, they're still coming in. I see it.
I'm telling you, yeah. I don't want to freak out Natalie Stopka of how many people.
No, you can't. You don't get to do that.
You
don't get to do that side note thing, because then that's.
Or am I muted?
No, you're not muted, honey.
Oh. Okay. Yes. All right. Is it weird that I still get nervous to do the Feedback Friday song? Is it? I mean, every single Friday, I just don't want to mess up on you guys.
Wait, now where you been? You know, it's Feedback Friday, so come on in.
Whoa.
Whoa. We have an interpretation.
And I just want to
forgot I wasn't muted.
Last week, for those of you that just took off at the end, I do hang out, and today we are launching something exciting. But last week we did a live Feedback Friday sing-along with the 40 people that stayed on.
Oh my goodness. I know, everyone thinks this is so crazy. See, they're laughing.
My husband and the guitar. Okay.
All right, are we good?
We're good. Let's everybody mute themselves.
Yes, please.
I get so nervous.
That's okay. I'm letting people in.
Kathy, you said don't look serious, right? So my face will give me away if I'm nervous. So hold on.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, it's the end of the week. Now where you been? Well, now it's Feedback Friday, so come on in. Come sit down and stare at your screen. We got a presenter that you never seen. We're Feedback Friday, we're on the loose. We'll be the train, you be the caboose. It's Feedback Friday with Kathy and Amy. Mashed potatoes and the gravy. It's Feedback Friday all day long. Feedback, feedback, Feedback Friday.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you, Amy. You are now letting people in, and I'm going to start the program. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Botanical Colors Feedback Friday. Today is episode 40 freaking 4. Oh, there was like hand movements. I didn't know about those. Okay, 44. We've done this 44 times. It's been amazing. This is our weekly show where we speak with dyers, artists, scientists, writers, scholars, activists, growers about our favorite topic, natural dyeing and color. I'm Kathy Hattori, president of Botanical Colors, and joining me is Amy Dufault, director of sustainability and social media. And we're really happy that you joined us today. Before we start, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I had no clue that you guys loved dye seeds so much, because normally in a normal day at Botanical Colors, we get, maybe 10 orders, usually for like Mordants, right? And all of a sudden, I wake up and there's 97 orders for seeds. So needless to say, it's going to take us a couple of days to get them all packaged. I mean, they're packaged, but just shipping. So we're shipping like crazy. So if you see me like doing something off screen, it's because I'm thinking about packaging dye seeds for you all. But thank you. And we'll talk a little bit later about what we're going to do next week regarding dye seeds and color. So thanks everybody. Today, our presenter for Feedback Friday is Natalie Stopka. And Natalie is an artist and educator focused on creative processes rooted in the materials and forces of the natural world. Her pursuit of historical surface patterning techniques includes natural dyeing, lake pigment extraction, marbling, and printmaking. These meticulous layered processes incorporate materials grown in her studio garden in Yonkers, New York, creating a seasonally evolving vocabulary of texture and color. Her botanical palette of lake pigments and indigo is inspired by the recipes of the 14th through 18th centuries artists and marblers. Okay, so I don't know about you, but a studio garden in Yonkers didn't really mean anything to me. But when I saw the pictures, I just wanted to crawl into one of those little hoop houses and watch the Hudson River. I mean, no wonder there's a whole school of American art called the Hudson River Artist School. It's so beautiful and mesmerizing. And I'm really hoping we're going to be able to see a couple pictures of Natalie's garden because it was amazing. For a little housekeeping, Amy is our moderator and she'll monitor the chat on this call, which is where you're going to post questions after the presentation. And we have everyone muted for the presentation, but we'll open it up after for questions and to say hello and goodbye. And the call is being recorded. Thank God I hit the record button early. And we'll have a video copy ready for this weekend with any other information resulting from the call. And today we are also kicking off a new edition to Feedback Friday called Picture of the
Week.
So there's like this reverb that happens that I don't really know how to do, but Amy does. And so at the end of the outro, we'll be showing you our picture of the week. This particular picture made Botanical Colors history by getting the most likes ever. So the artist behind it is joining to tell us what she did. So if you have time, stick around for a few minutes after Natalie's talk. So with all that preamble, I'm just going to seg into the presentation. Thank you so much and welcome, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and thank you, Amy, for having me. It is really an honor to be here. I am an avid audience member of Feedback Friday for a long time now. This might be self-referential to previous episodes. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I just am a big fan of Feedback Friday to bring us together in this wonderful community, which is warm and generous and creative of all of you lovely people. So I also want to say hi, Mom, and hi to my family. And let's get going. So, share. Are we all set? Okay. So what I'm talking about today is my journey into the dye pot, which is a story that is, I think, familiar to most of you, but also into lake pigments and using those beyond just making the pigment into some other artistic practices of mine. And I think of this journey all the way from plant to pigment and into paint. So here's my little baby madder plant, some little baby madder roots, some applications on textiles, and then turning that color from the dye into a stable pigment, which then I can use for ink, paint, many other artistic applications. My journey with natural dyeing started about 9 years ago. About 9 years ago. I moved to New York from New England then, and I was getting really interested in natural dyes. And I have to thank Textile Art Center, who has been mentioned in this forum before, for giving me an internship. I worked on fundraising and planning a community dye garden in an abandoned lot with Textile Art Center, and it was just very educational. I didn't really know anything about dyes. But since then, TAC has given me my first teaching opportunity, teaching natural dyes, and now I teach many classes every year in different continuing education organizations, including TAC, and this is some of our student work, featuring commonly known dyes and also dyes from my garden when I have them. So this is representative of that falling into the dye pot, that love story that I think everyone listening knows. So 3 years ago, I moved out of the city with my husband to Yonkers, New York, which is overlooking the Hudson River just north of the Bronx. And this is what our lawn looked like when we moved in, on a very sloping lot, a very small amount of flat land. And this is what that area looks like today. So, well, not today, last summer. So I have taken that lawn down with lawn and put in 5 raised beds, and 2 of those are devoted to natural dyes. I also grow lots of vegetables and herbs and cut flowers and try to build pollinator habitat. So this is one of my dye beds. And I really encourage you. I'm happy to hear that so many of you have been getting into ordering seeds. Growing annuals for dyes are so easy, and they make a great diverse pollinator habitat and diverse colors for our dye pot. So these are some of the annuals that I have been growing. I also grow madder and indigo. I've never managed a madder harvest yet. Hopefully this summer we'll have roots that are big enough. And I use these in my studio. I also use them for teaching. So I have succeeded in doing some indigo extractions, some better than others with the fermentation method. And before any of you, go crazy planting annuals, I would just encourage you to check the local guidelines, because some of the dye plants that are so easy to grow, like Weld and Tansy, in some parts of the country, they're invasive. So just check on that before you, invest in those seeds, which might become problematic. But I really feel like having this dye garden is a way to observe the entire lifespan of the dye plant and get to know it intimately, get to know what part to harvest, when to harvest it, how to use it, those nuances of color. And when we can observe really closely our materials, they reveal new secrets about themselves to us. So it's just been a long learning experience, and one that I don't think will ever stop. When you can really enjoy nature, it's so enriching to be able to, even if you don't have a garden, to be able to forage gives you a lot of the same perspective. And the other thing that having these plants provides is the immediacy. When you look out your window and see those plants waiting to go in the dye pot, it just spurs you into more creativity, more artistic pursuits, and some of the processes that are not really appropriate for using dry plant material for. So fresh leaf indigo dyeing, indigo extraction, bundle dyeing, these are so wonderful and aromatherapeutic with fresh plants. Well, the indigo fermentation may be aromatherapeutic in like a bad way, depending on how it smells at the time. But it really is an immediacy, and it put me in mind to try some experiments that are inspired by historical approaches to color. When that relationship with the natural world was in some ways more ingrained, and artists were by necessity very observant of their materials. So one of the projects that I was having a little bit of experiment with, maybe this was 2 summers ago, is clothlits. So clothlits are a medieval European technique for transporting color. So obviously they didn't have refrigeration. Transporting and storing dry plant material is, you know, sort of cumbersome and bulky. And transporting fresh plant material is just not possible at all. So clothlits were a way for artists, specifically illuminators, painters of small precious objects, to store their color from fresh plants. So a clothlit is a piece of linen usually that is not mordanted, and it is stained with a very saturated juice of something like purple irises or what is it called? Turnsole, Chrysophora tinctoria, I believe. And these are then dried, and you can snip a little corner off of the linen, put it in a dish of water or glaire, which is a binder that is from egg whites. And then the stain from the dye is going to redissolve, and you can use it for painting. Now, if there's no mordant in there, we know that it's not super light fast, it's not super stabilized, but the applications for this would be something that would be protected from light, like an illuminated manuscript. So it wasn't a huge concern for the artists using this technology. It was a technology at the time to use clothlits, and they knew that it wasn't light fast. They would store the clothlits in a book. So I tried it out. It kind of works. Is there any practical application for this? Not really, but I used some black hollyhocks and black night scabiosa. I tried some Hopi red amaranth that didn't work so hot. I tried some daylilies that they were kind of ugly, but I did have really good success with the hollyhocks and with the irises. So this is my approach to experimenting and looking at the historical record for insights into how people used to do things and how that can spur new innovations in my own work. And I will say, I am not a chemist, I'm not a historian, I'm just enthusiastic, and I carry a library card. So I find these techniques really interesting. So aside from clothlits, my big pursuit over the past few years, 3 or 4 years now, is lake pigments. So there's so many questions about lake pigments. What is a lake pigment? It is another method of stabilizing and transporting color from plant sources. We all know that dyes are water soluble by definition, and pigments by definition are not water soluble. So in order to make a lake pigment, we attach the colorant from a dye to a mineral substrate that will stabilize it and give it that insolubility so that we can use it in a bunch of different other applications, and we would be able to use the dye in its soluble form. Now, how is this done? Well, when we think about dyeing textiles, we know how absolutely important it is to have a strong bond between the dye molecule and the textile, and that the mordant is the key to creating this connection. And the mordant is going to provide us with light fastness, wash fastness, and good color saturation. Is going to give so many more bonding places on the textile for those dye molecules to attach. Now, when we're making a lake pigment, we use a mordant in exactly the same way. It's the same connection between the mordant and dye. We just leave the textile out. And what we're left with is this connection between the mordant and the dye. And the mordant is going to provide all the same benefits as it would in a textile. So a lake pigment has exactly the same light fastness as a textile that is well mordanted and dyed with the same plant material or insect material. So the examples in this photo are a couple different shades of lac, these two purple colors. And lac, of course, is, we know, an insect source of this beautiful purple dye, and also shellac, but it's also where we get the name lake. It's you know how we've already heard from other presenters how this terminology is very unruly. Names for fabrics that become synonymous with colors that now become very general terms for, you know, like scarlet, like carmine. And lake is another one. So lake comes from lac because lac was commonly used as a lake pigment. And then I have a pale pink that's from madder. I have a very dark purple that's from logwood. And this greenish lake is actually not mine. This is from, I have to shout out Tilka's Wild Pigment project from Tilka Elkins. If you haven't already watched her presentation, you should definitely do so. And I was happy enough to provide lake pigments to subscribers in this monthly pigment. It's a monthly pigment subscription, and you get pigments from other artists all over the country and all over the world. So this is a pigment that I received from Avalon in Hawaii, that's Popolo. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And even if you don't join the Ground Bright subscription, there is a fantastic monthly newsletter where you can learn about pigments more generally, earth pigments, mineral pigments. And it is another community of enthusiastic, creative people who love and respect nature. So that's what I have found out by getting involved with lake pigments, this crossover into other art forms. Okay, so what else do I need to say about this slide? Oh, right. So the purpose of the lakes is to preserve the color, and it's very stable in this form, very shelf stable. You can keep it, protected from light, and it's very lightweight. And then we can use it for paints. We can also use it for split lake dyeing. So we could turn it back into a dye after it's been laked. So another one of these sort of medieval technologies that arose a very long time ago, but it was practiced primarily from the 13th century up until the Industrial Revolution. So why did I get involved in lakes besides my interest in history? Like many of you, I don't practice just one type of art. I am also a marbler. So these are some examples of my marbling on paper. And these have been accomplished with acrylics on the right, and on the left with gouache. And so marbling is, let's see, those are just some examples. Marbling is a mono printing technique. It's a monotype technique where we have a viscous fluid and we float paint on the surface of that, and we manipulate it into patterns. We drape fabric or paper that has been prepared with a mordant on it. It absorbs all of the color and the design, and we've created a monotype. So it's really fun. And it's also historically was practiced with water-soluble paints like watercolor, gouache. Nowadays, for printing on fabric, we use acrylics because we want that thin, flexible binder that's going to be washable. Now, I don't love using acrylics. I wish there were a way around it. And I get so many questions from dyers because people know that I work with dyes. How can we marble with natural dyes? Well, it's really not possible because the dyes are water soluble. We can't float them on the surface of water. They would simply dissolve. So I went back to my history books and I discovered that historically, marblers were kind of obsessed with lake pigments. And lake pigments are sort of an end run around being able to use dyes, put them into a non-water soluble format, and then we can use them as paints and get those beautiful, rich colors that we love from natural sources and marble with them. So here we have, this is a little embarrassing. These are 3 of the first paints that I ever made by hand from madder. I learned something with all of these. This madder is very grainy. I think this is marigold. It's got actual plant material still in it, so it smells horrible. And I have some Maya blue or indigo clay blue here. That's very gloopy looking. However, I was able to use these to marble, and these are my first attempts at marbling with handmade paints, including these 2 lake pigments and 1 indigo clay pigment. And it's my proof of concept. So I thought, here we have it. Lakes are the key. Lakes are how we can marble with natural color. So the process of laking, we make an extraction. We strain out all of the plant material. We want all of that botanical matter gone and just the really lovely dye liquor, just the soluble dye in it. We add some ingredients. That would be a mordant, which is an acid, and we add a source of alkali, and we create some effervescence is the sort of offshoot of that. But what will happen is our dye molecules will bond to the alum and start to precipitate out. and we'll have this pigment forming. The basis of the pigment is called aluminum hydroxide. And then we have some supernatant here that is any leftover dye, any leftover minerals that are in solution, and all the off-gassing is already done in these photos. And then you can strain this pigment using a fine cloth or a coffee filter and dry it. Before drying it, we like to wash them in distilled water to try and get rid of any excess dye, any excess minerals that are dissolved, so that the pigment molecules themselves are nice and clean. They're not going to go off, and there's no other, oh, weird pH, you know, any sort of adulteration in there. Get that all out. They're nice and clean, and then we can dry them, and we can use them. Oh, these are some examples of matter. The really fun thing about these lake pigments is that they are just as reactive to modification as our dyes are. So these are 3 different batches of matter. I have different shades of color as well as different, I have a nice neutral color that has some copper in it at the bottom. So both value and saturation we can play with in the lake pigment recipe. Yeah, okay, and we can use these now for many different applications. But before I get into what those applications are, let's talk about the specific ingredients. Okay, so we know our mordants. That could be either potassium aluminum sulfate or aluminum sulfate, which is the more contemporary sort of, sort of made in a chemical plant replacement for the naturally occurring potassium aluminum sulfate, which is then purified. I feel like Kathy's addressed these 2 things before. So those are our mordants. Now, can we use aluminum acetate? I have never done it. I'm not a big fan of aluminum acetate, so I really don't think it would work the same way. Our other mordants that we might use are those minerals that act as color modifiers. I'm going to talk about these, and I'm going to loop back and talk about safety. So you could use copper, iron, tin as color modifiers to get those shifts in shade if you use them carefully. So the mordant is something that we're all familiar with, I think. Then we need an alkali. So the alkali is going to cause that mordant to precipitate out of solution, and it's going to absorb all the color as it falls. So the alkali could be sodium carbonate, that's soda ash. It could be potassium carbonate. It could be lime water, which is just a saturated solution of calcium hydroxide. We know that from our organic indigo vats. It could be a homemade ash water. So if you have access to hardwood ashes, you can soak those in, steep them for a couple weeks in distilled water and rainwater. And what you get is a solution of all of the soluble minerals, which are mostly potassium carbonate and sodium carbonate. Those are occurring earlier up our list here. So hardwood ash water is a great source of alkali that is free. Or you could just use calcium carbonate, which is chalk. Now, the calcium carbonate is going to give us the paleness of that white pigment. It's going to stretch out the color that we have, make it more pastel. It's also going to add opacity, because the aluminum hydroxide, which is the core of the lake pigment that is colored, that is very translucent on its own. And it's just colorless except for the dye that is attached to it. So sometimes for certain applications, we want to add more body, add opacity, and that is what the chalk or the calcium carbonate is going to do. And there are a bunch of sources that we could use. So regular chalk, marble dust, eggshells. I use eggshells for my kitchen that are ground up. I've heard of people using cuttlefish bone. I haven't done it. Any sort of calcareous earth. So that is any sort of earth that is foraged, that is high in calcium, in chalk, or marl, which is a mixture of a clay and a chalky or a limestone situation, or just certain clays could be used. So we have a lot of sources of sort of a filler that's going to extend the paint. Now, as far as safety goes, this is so important. I know that we always have to respect our materials, even though they're naturally occurring. We have to take care to research them and know how to protect ourselves. So as far as the mordants go, we don't have to be terribly concerned about the aluminum mordants, but take all the precautions that you know when you're using iron, copper, or tin to protect not just yourself, but also your wastewater. We only want to use as much of those as are needed to get the color change. So if you're not familiar with using those, you should not take this as license to go ahead without doing a little more research in those. As far as the alkalis are concerned, they are caustic, so we wear gloves. And especially if you're making your own hardwood ash water, you have to keep all of these things labeled. The pH is very high, and just take care when you're using them. And as far as the sources of calcium carbonate or extenders, these are going to be powders. Whenever we're grinding powders or working with finely powdered material, you have to protect your respiratory system. So wear a respirator if you're grinding these. And again, just take care of yourself. Wipe down your surfaces when you're done using them. The Wild Pigment Project just posted new guidelines on safety for grinding pigments, which is so helpful. A lot of us feel comfortable working with natural dyes. We know the drill about personal safety and disposing of these ingredients, but once you start working with dry pigments, it's a new character to get to know and protect ourselves. Okay, so making paint. This is the process of making watercolor paint. From some, I believe this is a Eastern Brazil wood pigment. And it's a process of really grinding that pigment as finely as possible while wearing a respirator. Once it's wet, you don't have to do that anymore. And you're mixing it with a binder and shearing those particles as finely as you can. Now, watercolor is made with gum arabic, which is the sap of the acacia tree, but there are many other applications. Any artistic material that uses a pigment, we can use like pigments. So it could be pastels, wax crayons, oil pastels. It could be oil paint, casein paint. Gosh, I could go on all day. We also can use them with a soy binder. John Marshall made a fantastic presentation on Feedback Friday about using soy milk binders, and those are very compatible with our lake pigments. So on the left, I have some examples of a soy binder. So it is a very thin, lovely paint. And on the right are some of my homemade watercolors. They all have their own characteristics. And each time I make a new color, I get a little bit better at it. And these are watercolors that have been made into my marbling paints, which are really just very thinned versions of watercolors. So I have Sulfur Cosmos for my own garden. I have indigo, a Dutch pink it's called, is made from buckthorn, some cochineal, and some madder. And if I just add to these some of my homemade eggshell white, I have a really good marbling palette. And I have been recently exploring using this and successfully get my paint to float. You can intermix the colors, make really beautiful palettes. We don't have to keep them as standalone. We can intermix them and making some lovely prints. Now, these have a little bit of a different texture, a softness and a romanticism that you don't see in a lot of contemporary marbling, but I think it's lovely. I'm gonna, keep experimenting with it. And I love the interaction of color. We know how beautifully natural dyes sit together and harmonize. And the same thing is true when we're using them as paints. And here are some more examples. These are all on paper. And that Dutch pink is just, which is the yellow color, which is just amazing. And I can also use my lake pigments successfully for marbling on fabric. Now, I said that we need to use an acrylic binder to get that wash fastness. We need that flexible, thin substrate that the acrylic is going to provide. But I looked back at John Marshall's information about using soy sizing, and I tried it out. And I can apply a few top coats of soy milk sizing to marbled fabric. I tested the wash fastness very rigorously, and I found that it works brilliantly. It's just as wash fast as the acrylic is. Now, this is an incredibly laborious process, very intensive time-wise, but it does work. So here I am in my little studio, marbling in my large vat. And besides my commercial work, marbling, I do a lot of pattern development and licensing and printing for events and weddings and things like that. I also produce my own artwork. And that is a little bit more about topics that are close to my heart. So here's an example that is an imagined dissection of the strata underneath my garden, all of the minerals in that geology that are feeding the plants that are creating the colors. And this is made with black ink and with all of my handmade paints and inks. And this is another example that's much larger, it's about 30 inches square. This is a reflection on sort of the importance of our waterways and water security. And this subtle color here is very soft, yes, but I made it as a lake from the roots of the flag iris, Iris pseudochorus, which is invasive in my region, and it clogs waterways and it outcompetes with those native marginal plants. And the roots of it are a wonderful source of this sort of soft pinkish color. So it's one of those examples of a plant that we can deracinate and extirpate and use it as a source of color. So it's really special for me to be able to make artwork only with colors that I have either grown or foraged or bartered with other practitioners for. And that's something that I'm moving towards in my artwork. And so that's the end of the presentation proper, but I have a epilogue really quickly. My epilogue is the revelation of the results from a recent test that I did. And I try to test things scientifically, only look at one variable at a time. So recently I thought to myself, let's look at some of the lake pigments that don't have the most wonderful light fastness. Again, it's equal to how they would perform as a dye. And maybe we could use a tannin, a source of tannin, as an extra layer of UV protection, because we know that tannins have that capacity. So I made two lakes. One is a logwood and one is a marigold. And I added some tannin from oak galls and I tested the light fastness. And the results are in. So this is my marigold lake. You can see that the marigold without the tannin performed so much better. It hardly faded at all. It's perceptible, but it's very slight. Whereas the marigold lake with the tannin, we have so much darkening, even though I used a gallo tannin. So this was a little bit surprising. I mean, not unforeseen, but the degree to which the tannin darkened was very surprising to me. And I have the same result. It's not terribly visible on the screen, but the same result with the logwood. So now that I have that result, even though it's a little bit disheartening, it's not really what I was hoping for, now I have the possibility for performing some more tests. I could test the quantity of tannin that I add. So from 0 up to say 50%, and test that out. See if in a smaller quantity we can get that light protection without the darkening. I could also paint much thinner swatches. We know that a more saturated color is going to fare much better than a pastel version. So I could paint much more, let's say, a number of swatches with one coat of paint, 2 coats, 3 coats, and see how that influences the light fastness. But this is proving, even though it's disproving my hypothesis about the tannin, in one way, it's also proving that maybe it's not necessary if you're using a saturated color or many coats of paint. And then it's also giving me this corollary concept that maybe I could create some pigments that are intentionally light changing when they're exposed to light. So what if you take something very fugitive like pokeberry and you add a dark tannin like kutch or fustic and it's exposed to light and it changes color over time. So that could be another interesting avenue to explore. So that's my presentation. Hope you enjoyed it. And I am ready for your questions. What do you have for me, Amy?
Okay, well, first of all, do you have water nearby?
Did I go really fast? I was so
Oh, you
hopeful.
did amazing.
No, you
Save
were
the-
great. And you were talking in multi-syllables. That was like fantastic. It was good.
Yeah, okay. So let's see here. Let's get you spotlighted first of all. Because, okay. Holy guacamole. That was like so much. I've got so many notes written down. Okay, so we had a couple people write some questions in, so I'm going to kick it off with those. So let's see. Wendy had asked, when we create lakes, we add an alkaline substance such as washing soda so that it reacts with the dye and sediments at the bottom. Doesn't this process affect the actual color of the dye source? How do I regain the actual color?
The actual color is what you see in the precipitate. Yes, you might see a color shift when we add the alum, that's acidic. When we add the source of alkali, whatever it may be, that's going to shift the color back again. When at the end of the reaction, our pigment and the supernatant, which is the liquid above it, should be pH of 7, completely neutral. We want our pigment to be really nice and stable, no wacky pH too far in one direction or another. So yes, you might see the color change, but you'll be back to neutral at the end.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go back and forth. Chat to this, chat to that. Kate Ellis, I think I saw Black Knight scabiosus growing in your garden in one of the early slides. I'm going to grow it for the first time this year. Do you have any suggestions for growing and dyeing or bundle dyeing with it?
I would just say to get it started early. Where I am, we're 8 weeks from the last frost. So in the next couple weeks or so, get those seeds going and just keep picking it. It's one of those annuals that will keep on flowering all through late summer as you pick it.
Okay, you actually answered all these questions already that are on this paper, except for, yeah, actually you've answered all these questions. So hopefully Margarita and Wendy, who are here, you feel confident that your questions have been answered. Okay, I see Wendy nodding her head. Okay, so, oh, people want to move to Yonkers to be near you. Okay, great. And how do you manipulate the values of hue?
The value of the hue, well, that is the role of opacity for one thing. The trickier way of manipulating value is to get a super saturated pigment, we need the right balance between the amount of alum and the amount of dye. If we have too much alum, it's going to spread out the dye and it will look very pale because that aluminum hydroxide is colorless on its own. So that's how we would get a paler pigment or a very, very translucent pigment. Now, if we want something that is super saturated, we need to have a lot of dye absorbed by a small amount of alum. And this is something that can be very hard to gauge. How much dye is in solution? How much alum do I add? Well, we can do it in stages. You could say you have 10 grams of plant material. You make an extraction. You go ahead and strain it, and then you start with 5 grams of alum, and then you gauge the color. When you see the separation of the pigment and the liquid above it, what color is that liquid? We want it to be close to clear, but we can do it gradually. If it doesn't look like it's close to clear yet, add another 5 grams of alum plus the appropriate amount of alkali to get it neutral. And it doesn't damage the pigment that's already formed to reheat the mixture and add more of those mineral reagents. So gauge it gradually so that you don't overdo it and end up with a super pale pigment.
Okay. Erica Lubetsky. Hey, Erica. Can lakes be used to paint on fiber and still be wash fast and light fast directly applied to the fabric in a pattern?
That is the beauty of this soy milk binder. So the light fastness is not influenced by the binder ever. The light fastness is inherent to the dye and having a strong connection to the mordant. So our lakes are as light fastness as they're ever going to get. And then the binder that you use has to be washable. And the soy milk that is John Marshall is the evangelist for this. When it is properly cured, it oxidizes into a thin, flexible protein polymer that is sort of enmeshing the lake pigments or earth pigments into the sort of fiber, and that is washable. And it definitely helps if we can pre-size the fabric with soy milk, apply the paints, the pigments, whatever they may be, that are mixed with soy milk, and then top coat it with 1 or 2 or even 3 soakings in the soy milk. And that is really going to ensnare all of those pigments and make them as washable as possible.
Mhm. See, Gretchen's asking, what was the source of pigments you mentioned that the green pigment came from?
That is, I believe it's called popolo. It's a Hawaiian plant. That's all I know. And
Okay.
again, that is from Avalon, who submitted it to the Ground Bright. But
And I
a
have
lot
that
of chlorophyll-rich plants we could use to make a green pigment. They're not super light fast, but it is a lovely, a beautiful shade. And the question we should always ask is, what is the appropriate application for this pigment or dye? There's a place for every one of these beautiful colors, whether it's super light fast or super fugitive. There's a place where it's going to shine. So think about where that place is.
Okay, let's see. Pamela is asking, can you share references to learn more about clothlits?
Oh, where did I come up with this? You know, there are several books. I'm going to have to come back to Amy and give you some links because it's not in my brain right now. Some of them are in the public domain, so you might be able to just read them online.
I'll make a note of it so we can get that in there. I don't know what was the name of the lake pigment group you mentioned? Oh, it's probably Wild Pigment Project.
Yeah.
What was the name of the lake pigment group you mentioned early in your presentation? And I have that to put in there, and I know Tilka's here too. So anyways, if you want to ask Tilka questions later. Let's see. Okay. This was fantastic, says Liz. I was wondering if you could speak to the process of washing lake pigments.
Oh, yes. So washing or rinsing is just cleaning the pigments after they've been formed. And there's a couple ways. I don't have like an easy demo thing handy. There's a couple ways that we could do it. So one would be to just filter the pigment so that you have it stuck in a filter, and then you can squidge it out of your filter when it's still wet and just cover it with a few more inches of distilled water. I'm not super uptight about using distilled water, especially right now. Like, we're not going grocery shopping as much as usual. I'm not going to deal with it. Tap water is usually fine as long as you don't have a lot of iron in it. So cover it with fresh water, and that's going to give enough liquid for any excess dye or excess, it could be alum, it could be excess soda ash, anything that's still in there that can dissolve, we want to dissolve. And then we can let the pigment settle again, pour that liquid off. And we do that a couple times to make sure that the pigment is as clean as possible. You want to see that the liquid is really clear. And that means that your pigment is going to have a much longer shelf life, and it won't have any other minerals in the mix that we don't really need that could cause bad reactions when you make your paint. If you have excess soda ash or alum, that's going to affect the pH. It could cause crystallization. If for marbling, it could cause really not pleasant effects. So we want the pigment to be nice and clean.
I'm going to do a plug for you here, by the way, that you know, when we have links later that you do teach workshops, and we are trying to make you teach a workshop with us too.
Yeah, I have
you can have a look.
two lake pigment workshops already scheduled for the spring, and maybe I'll work something out with Kathy too.
Yeah. Thumbs up from Kathy. Okay. All right. I think maybe more people than one person, more than Katie Smith, wants to know this. I want to know this. Where did you get your gigantic metal vat, and where do you get your Carrageenan, which is a word I never thought I'd say out loud? I'm assuming that is what you're using in your marbling bath.
Yes, I use Carrageenan. It's the best. That is the viscous goo that we put in our marbling tray to float the paints on top of, and it just gives us the best line quality. It's it's luscious, and it comes from seaweed. So you can get it from Dharma carries it. You can get it from Talus, which is a bookbinding vendor. That's usually where I get it from. Now it's if you're in Europe, it's a little bit trickier. I've heard it's hard to find it in Europe. So sorry, I don't have a good source there.
Okay.
The other thing, oh yeah, the trays. So I use custom welded stainless steel trays for my marbling, and that is because they have a very fine lip. So when you're doing combing patterns, those very fancy looking sort of Florentine style things, you need a thin lip so the tines of the combs can straddle the lip in both directions. So I had mine welded, and it's very simple for a welder to make these. It's just a box, but it is an investment. If you don't need or want a huge stainless steel tray laying around, you can just make a wooden frame out of 2x4s or any sort of wood, clamp it together or screw it together with L brackets, and just line it with some plastic from the hardware store, some heavy plastic drop cloth. And when I do that for teaching, because it can break down into basically no space at all for storage and travel, you can use that plastic multiple times. So get a nice heavy thick one and use it again and again.
Great. Let's see. What do you use to grind eggshells or cuttlefish?
I don't know. I just have read about the cuttlefish. I haven't tried it. For grinding eggshells, they're very hard to protect those little birds. So first of all, you clean them. I do have this in my Instagram stories. This would be under the Brazil wood lake highlight. I followed a medieval recipe for a Eastern Brazil wood lake, and I used eggshells as the source of white. So you grind them in your mortar and pestle first. You protect your respiratory system while you're doing that by wearing a mask. And then I use a muller and a slab, which is this guy. So this is a tempered glass slab. It could also be a piece of porphyry or a piece of marble. And this is a glass muller. And you grind, you put some water into the eggshells or whatever you're grinding until it's a nice sort of creamy consistency. And the muller gets suctioned down, and you gradually grind it until adding water as needed until it just is this luscious viscosity. And it takes quite a while to process 50 grams of eggshell, which was like from maybe 8 eggs or something. It took me about 3 hours to get to the right consistency. So it's not for the faint of heart, but it is really wonderful to make something from nothing that would literally be going on the compost. And before you grind, you do have to remove the membranes. So you just soak the eggshells in vinegar for 20 minutes, and you can just peel the membranes out then.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Have you tried silk screening with lake pigments?
I have not. I'm not a silk screener. In theory, it's perfectly practicable. You just have to get the right binder. So you could use a plant-based gum for that. How would you make it washable if you're working on fabric? I don't really know.
You don't have to know everything. We told you that. You don't, you know so much. You know more than most on this. Okay. So what is the percentage of mordant that you add to the lake solution?
That's the secret. It's not a secret. That is how do we know? It depends on how saturated your dye solution is. So I will recommend my favorite dye book, The Art and Science of Natural Dyes by Catherine and Joy. They have a lake pigment recipe in there, which is wonderful, which is, I think, one of the reasons so many people have gotten into lake making. According to that recipe, for every liter of dilute dye, it could be something that you have used to dye fabric once or twice again already. For every liter of dilute dye, it's 10 grams of alum and then 5 grams of soda ash or any other alkali to get that neutral pH. Now, 10 grams for 1 liter, how strong is the dye plant you're using? That's a huge scale. So if you compare something like madder that you need 100 or 200% to your weight of fiber to something like cochineal where you need like 10%, we need to add a lot more alum to that cochineal to grab all the color, and much less alum to the madder to grab that smaller amount of color that could be from the same weight of insect or plant. So it's something that I've been testing and taking notes on many different and trying to get to grips with this question, how much alum? There's no simple answer. So like I said, take it in stages until you work out a specific recipe for one plant that you know works for you. Take it in stages, assess the color of the liquid, and then add more of the alum and soda ash as needed.
Let's see. So you don't need to steam the marbled silk if you're using the soy binder. Sorry, it's kind of like.
No, steaming doesn't, when we're steaming something that is printed or dyed, the steam is going to help to catalyze that bond to the mordant and make it wash fast. For the soy binder, it's not working in the same way. It's not a chemical attraction between the colorant and the soy and the fiber. It's a physical ensnarement of that fiber and pigment that are getting entrapped in the oxidized soy protein. So steaming is neither here nor there for it. It's not going to help oxidize that soy any faster. So we have to cure these. I cure my soy milk, anything I've used painted or marbled with soy milk, I cure it for a month before washing.
For laking, is the ratio of alum and soda ash depending on the dye source? How do I know how much I should add?
It can depend on the dye source because some dyes are slightly acidic, like the carminic acid in cochineal. So in that case, we would need to add a little bit more soda ash to offset the acidity of the alum plus the carminic acid. So we always want the mixture to be neutral at the end of the day. So you can use your litmus paper to test the pH as you're going along and make sure that it's neutral. You can add more alum or more soda ash as needed to get it to neutral. Or you can be like our medieval forebears who just had to rely on their wits and observation to figure out these amazing recipes, which means you observe it closely and you listen to it. And when you hear it stop fizzing, stop adding soda ash. And that's when it should be neutral.
Tilka, I know you're not Tilka, but I know Tilka's listening right now, and there's a bunch of questions for Tilka about the Wild Pigment Project. So I can't see if Tilka put her link in here for the things that everybody's asking about that you've talked about, Natalie, but Tilka, if you can, that would be awesome.
I'll say it's devoted to amazing artists who forage wild pigments in nature. And there have been a few natural dyes included, lake pigments, and also an amazing Coastal Valley indigo blue. So some dyes are getting represented, dye colorants are getting represented as well, but it's primarily for earth pigments. And it's a whole new world for me.
We're going to take one more question and then Kathy's going to be wrapping it up. But I'm so sorry, you guys, we can't get to all of these, but I know we talked about this, Natalie, about the questions maybe that we didn't get to. Yeah. So let's see, regarding pokeberry, have you tried to make a lake since alum is not typically used to dye with it? Can you list the collective you mentioned, Wild Pigment Project?
I have not tried to lake with pokeberry. It's just so fugitive. I don't know. Try it, see how it goes.
Kathy, read that quote to help Natalie with this one.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, I have just a quote of inspiration from another forager and ink maker named Jason Logan, who's out of, I believe, Ontario. He may also be in New York. I'm not quite sure, but very inspirational because we all basically freak out about the fact that the stuff that we're making is
I got it.
okay, thank you. The stuff that we're making may not be what we thought we were going to get. And so this is called the ground rule. Sorry, I have like all these Post-its, but this is called the ground rules of natural ink making. And what Jason Logan says is ink is alive. And I think we can say the same as pigments are alive. The dyes are alive, right? Stop worrying about how long your color will last in its current state and start delighting in the way that it changes. So these are the words of Jason Logan. And I think it helps just keep us focused on I mean, I know we tend to kind of like dive into the weeds, like how much do you use? What do you do here? So much of this wasn't really very extensively chronicled in a way that we can find it. And so all of this research and experimentation that Natalie has done is super, I think, important and inspiring, because you can see she's starting with very simple materials and just step by step going through how does it get processed, where do I put it in, how do I do this, what about that, and just kind of observing every single step. And that's important for us to do. So Jason is saying it's going to change. Delight in it because it's going to be beautiful.
Two, 8, 4, 3. B like Bravo, Y like Yankee, 0.
Great. I don't know where
Okay.
it's from, but oh my.
Could
D
you
as in
mute
David,
yourself,
Y as in
please?
Yankee, 0. B like
Yeah.
Bravo, P like Papa. What was after that?
I can't find where it is, Kathy.
It's somebody's code. It's your
Hold on.
password. There we go.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
I'm just gonna, am I ready to wrap it up?
you sure are.
Because I have my script here. All right. So
0,
just a
0,
few.
1, A like Alpha, H like Hotel.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, could you mute yourself, sir?
And what's the serial number of the UPS?
We don't know.
I don't know what the number at UPS is.
Okay. Wow, we're just having like an unmute circus here. Let me just get a few words in and then we will go to unmute. We have a few spots left in Sasha Durr's plant tones class. And I just wanted to point out that even though we're working on a silk and wool substrate, that there is a part of this process where we just dye an unmordanted piece of fabric. And so this whole idea of a clothlet, I mean, maybe we can sort of pseudo replicate it. I don't know, Natalie, if it was ever done on a protein fiber. Does it bond too strongly?
I don't know, it could. It might depend on how substantive it is.
Yeah. So, but we could try it and just see if we can, get a watercolor out of it. And for those of you who joined us last week for Ayobami Adeyemo's talk and his quest to get a new embroidery machine for to really start kind of a new life for himself, he still has his GoFundMe going, and he would love contributions if you would like to help him. And I don't even think I need to tell you about the dye seeds. Yes, we got the dye seeds. We are processing your dye seed orders. It's still not spring yet, so it's a little early for you unless you're in a super warm climate, and we will get those to you. Just for next week, we're going to actually be talking about planting dye flowers, dye plants, and the colors that they make. So it's going to be kind of a round robin between Melissa Moses of Plant Workshop, myself, and Amy talking about some of the experiments and results we've gotten from things that we've grown in our garden. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And we can go ahead and unmute for our surprise because...
Well, hold on. Don't unmute yet, Kathy.
Yes.
Because
I got the rest of it.
Hannah Ross is here.
Oh,
Hey.
okay. So let me just give her the intro.
Yeah.
So this is something that Amy Babe has been dreaming and scheming of. It's called Picture of the
Week.
And Amy, take it from here.
Okay, great. Well, let's see. So Hannah, you can unmute yourself. Where are you, Hannah?
Hello, hi, I unmuted. Hi, everyone.
Oh, there. All right. So we're gonna start this new thing called Picture of the Week. And I reached out to Hannah because I was like, your picture got the most likes of all eternity on social media. But even it stopped me and I said, what the hell is that? So first of all, I'm going to show you now the picture of the week. Let's see. And then you're gonna talk about what in God's name happened here, Hannah.
Thank you for having me. This is the ice cube. And I would love to just go through a process of how I made this sculpture. And it was very much inspired by Cara Marie Piazza's ice dyeing class, how to use natural dyes with ice and snow to create texture and pattern on fabric. And this was mid-process. This was halfway through the process of creating. This is a, maybe 5-foot by 7-foot piece of cotton fabric. It's a cotton sheet actually, that I placed in the bottom of a sink, an outdoor sink. I applied the natural dye substrates, some powdered, some excess dye baths, some exhausted moments. It was just things I had actually lying around. Let it sit for 1 week. And then it froze in the bottom of the sink in this exact formation. And from there, I took it out to a field where my studio is in Hudson, New York, arranged the square, and took this photo.
And how did your neighbors react to that, seeing this installation suddenly in your front yard?
That's such a good question, because I share studio space with some other artists, and I got some texts that day. What is this? What is this monolith? What is this, creature in the yard? And it stayed there for 1.5 weeks, de-thawing. So I told my other studio mates, it's staying there. We're just gonna see what happens as it melts. And this question, what size is it? It's actually only about 2 feet by like 1.5 feet tall. It's not as big as it seems. It's a small chunk of fabric that is just in process. And I decided this past year to not use any more ropes or rubber bands, no more resist tools. I just want to use natural elements to create the patterns themselves instead of restricting the fabric, just allowing rain or heat or time and ice to create the pattern. So this is the beginning of that exploration, and it was very much inspired by Cara's class. I was like, oh, this is perfect. The ice, I'm going to let it create the pattern.
This is awesome. And I know, I'm going to stop the share because I know you have some, there's on your Instagram page, you posted the results of the de-thaw that we can definitely, I can pull up if you want to talk a little bit more. And also you have things that you're selling now on your site that are maybe, it's not from this, because this is like your one sheet, which I thought was like 3 foot by 3 foot or something in your front yard. And I thought it was a bunch of clothes. I know we were tagged on social media that it was all botanical colors dyes that were in there. But so I was just like, what is happening? And that's when you explained to me, it's actually this perspective. It makes it look bigger than what it actually was. But yeah,
very inspiring, because I want to use old clothes now. I'm thinking, let's get old clothes in the mix. I'm making some more sculptures. I'm really enjoying the process to use your colors, fabric, create this, these different textures.
Yep. And I'm going to open this up because I want to show everybody what the de-thaw looks like, but let me see here.
I do have more photos of the process if you would like to see more.
Yeah, I'm pulling. So this is Hannah on Instagram. So follow Hannah.
Follow Hanooks. It's
Hanooks, Hannah from Hanooks. But yeah, let's see. This was the de-thaw picture, right?
Yes.
So look how beautiful that is, like what the natural dyes did on the fabric like that. It's so pretty. And
it's so amazing how the melting is actually captured. The longer I let it sit, I've done like maybe 10 of these experiments. This is one that I shared, but the longer you let the fabric sit and de-thaw over time, you can really see the melting. And then I let it dry and ironed it for like another couple days to really set the color in, because you're not using heat in the process, except for prior to the snow application, I did heat up the dyes and then poured them on after they cooled down. But because you're not using the heat, you need the time to like really let the color sit in there. I had a few experiments that didn't work at all. They just washed out very quickly. So like Natalie was speaking to, letting her experiment sit for a month with the soy milk, with the snow dyeing, it's really important, especially on cotton, to just let it be.
Well, thank you so much for letting us share our very first, our inaugural picture of the week. And yeah, follow Hanouk.
Yep.
Hanouk. I tried to write it down, like in my mind, whenever I've seen it, it's like Hanouk's, but I just said it the right way, I'm sure. Okay.
You got it.
All right. Well, I think, yeah, there's people asking you questions too. You can always, in the chat, but if you guys want to unmute yourselves now and ask, you can ask Hannah questions. You can ask Natalie questions if she wants to hang out. This becomes a strange free-for-all that Kathy runs screaming from.
Gonna scream and go. I'm making you host, Amy.
All right.
No, I actually have the turkey red class I'm supposed to be in.
I'd like to say something really quick. Can you all hear me?
Oh, hey, Tilka.
Hey, this is Tilka. I run Wild Pigment Project. Thanks so much, Natalie, for all the shout outs for the project. And I just want to say that Natalie reached out to me really early on when I was doing this Ground Bright subscription and said she wanted to contribute a lake pigment. And at the time I thought like, wow, that's amazing, because it's the word I use to describe a lake contribution to Ground Bright is athletic, because, all of that sifting of the material, the filtering, it's just very labor intensive. And so it's been really moving to be able to share that with subscribers through Natalie's contribution. She's a 2-time contributor to Ground Bright, but we also this summer, she got together with a team because now the subscription's bigger, so we need more material. So it actually took 4 people to fill the subscription. And Julie Beeler, Avalon Pardia, Ashley Whiteloff, and Natalie together did it. And it was just kind of an amazing, they all did different green lakes. So beautiful process. And thank you, Natalie, for just.
Nice to see you. I saw Julie here too.
Hi, Julie.
All right. Well, thanks, Tilka. And I'll put the link for your Feedback Friday, as well as to the site and to the project that Natalie was talking about. So everybody, because a lot of people obviously were interested in learning more. And then Natalie, I'll have Natalie's links and workshop, links for her workshops. And so you can, and then we're going to grab the questions out of the chat, and Natalie's going to answer as many as she feels she should or can in her spare time. But yeah, if you guys want to like unmute yourselves and say hi to everybody, go for it.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Thank you
so much, Natalie.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you.
Hello,
Thank you.
In one of your workshops.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Amy.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Natalie, is your link in the chat at all for your workshops? Just right now, just for the heck of it?
I can find it.
Yeah, just plop it on in there. I like how right after this, everybody's going to probably go buy seeds, and Kathy's head's going to.
Totally.
I kept looking at the seed sales yesterday, going, "Oh my God!" Poor Kathy.
Actually, I want to hop on and say if anyone has not taken Natalie's natural dyeing classes, marbling classes, I've taken her 101 natural dyeing. It's amazing. So, very grateful. Be on the same chat, and y'all should definitely sign up for some classes that she has coming up.